Okay, everybody. Well, it's about that time. So I'm very happy to announce my very good friend, Rodger Wambolt from CorelDRAW. He is one of the senior, what's your title, Rodger? I always get it wrong.
Senior product trainer is typically what I go by, but I've been called many other things.
You know, but he is definitely my mentor when it comes to Corel. And so I'm very excited to see what you have for us today, and please take it away, sir.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Sprite. I'm just going to share my screen here. All right, you should all be able to see my screen. Well, welcome everybody to this open house. This is our first day, I guess. If you're not aware, this session is going to be about a 90-minute session, and hopefully there will be time for questions towards the end. I'm just going to jump right in. So I'm introducing some of the new features. You may have seen them previously if you've been on other sessions with me, or maybe you've been to the Corel site or the Discovery Center. You may have seen some of the new features, but I'll be going over those as well as some of the old standby stuff as well. So just jumping right in, included with CorelDRAW Graphics Suite 2021, we have CorelDRAW, which is the vector manipulation application. So that allows you to create and edit vector objects. And of course, within the vector or within CorelDRAW, you can also modify bitmaps as well. CorelDRAW.app is an online graphics design application. Now, it is provided free of charge with the subscription version of CorelDRAW, and for a limited time, I shouldn't say for a limited time, with the start of COVID, we've decided to include CorelDRAW.app to the retail version as well, or to the regular version of CorelDRAW. That won't be going much longer, I don't imagine, but for now it is there to access. The advantage to that is you can go to a customer site, log into their system, and actually bring up files that you may have created for them on your CorelDRAW. So you can now upload to the cloud and download from the cloud directly from within CorelDRAW, and then access those files in the CorelDRAW.app. Next in the package is Corel Photo Paint 2021, and that's used for raster manipulation or manipulating bitmap images. Corel Power Trace is slated as a separate application here. It's brought to front as being a separate application, but it's actually part of CorelDRAW. And it allows you to convert a raster image to a vector file format. That's great if you have a low-res bitmap image and somebody wants you to sublimate that on a coffee mug or a t-shirt or something like that. You need to be able to convert it from raster to vector. It's certainly going to help with that. Next, you have the Corel Capture 2021. It's a screen capture utility. Now, it's only available on the Windows side. As you can see, I'm actually demonstrating this on the Windows platform. Throughout the session, I will talk about some of the differences between the Windows version and the Macintosh version. But for argument's sake, they are basically the same product, just a little bit different look and feel to them. And there are a few minor limitations. And then finally, we have the Corel Font Manager. Now, the Corel Font Manager was first introduced in CorelDRAW X8, and it gives you the ability to access your fonts, catalog them, and create collections of those fonts. And one of the strengths in the package or in that program that I feel is the ability to utilize fonts that are not installed on your system. So in other words, they're not installed into the Windows Fonts folder. You simply have them on an external hard drive, on a thumb drive, or maybe copied to a folder on the desktop or on someplace on your hard drive, and you can actually access those without them being installed. We start off with the interface, and because this is an introduction, I want to talk about some of the basic things in CorelDRAW. And as I said, we start off with the interface. Across the top, I have the standard drop-down menus. Below that is the standard toolbar. Directly below that is the context-sensitive or interactive property bar. Now, we call it the interactive property bar in that if I select a tool within the toolbox, the property bar is going to change, and it's going to give me additional capabilities of whatever tool may be selected. So if I select the polygon tool, or maybe I go down and I select the spiral tool, then I have different capabilities with that tool by using the items along the property bar. In the toolbox, you'll notice that I clicked on the little black triangle. That's an indication that there's other tools buried below that. And any icon that has a black triangle, that's an indication there's additional tools there. Further down the bottom of the screen, we have our page navigation. We can see here I've got a 37-page document. I can go back a page, I can go forward a page. All of a sudden, I'm starting to get a bit of echo. Sprite, has my audio changed there? Okay, looks like it's gone now. So I can go back a page, I can go forward a page. I can also go to a specific page simply by clicking on the tab for that page. Below this is the document color palette. Now, the document color palette is unique in that it travels with the document. And so if I create a brand new document, create an element on the page, so I grab my rectangle tool, left click and drag to create a rectangle. Over here, I'm going to select the red, left click on the red to give it a red fill. I'll right click on the yellow to give it a yellow outline. And you'll notice my document palette now has two colors in it. It's got the red and the yellow. So as we build our document, the document color palette gets built out as well. I'm just going to close this off. I don't need to save it. Continue below that, we have the status bar. Now I currently have my pick tool selected. If I select this element on the page, you can see I've got a rectangle on layer 1. If I move this aside, I can select this, and it's actually a screen cap, and you can see that's a bitmap of 93 dpi by 93 dpi. I'm going to move that rectangle back into place by doing a Control Z. Now, one more thing about this session, if you will, I use a fair number of shortcut keys, and I'll do my best to tell you what these shortcut keys are as I'm doing them, so you can make note of them. I'm a bit of a believer in that my right hand stays on my mouse, my left hand stays on the keyboard, and if I can keep them like that while I'm designing, I'm a lot quicker, a lot more productive. And so I tend to use a lot of keyboard shortcuts, and I'll do my best to blurt those out as I'm doing them. Again, still on the status bar, I'm going to select this rectangle. You'll notice that it has an outline of 0.2 millimeters. There's no fill. If I was to click on a color to give it a fill, of course, you'll see that in the status bar. I'm going to do a Control Z to undo that. Down the right-hand side, we have the default color palette. Now, what I mean by that is when I create a new document, in here I have the primary color mode. If I select CMYK, then my default palette on screen is going to be a CMYK palette. Of course, we're doing sublimation, so we want to go with RGB. If I create a new document, the new palette is going to be RGB. And you can see the little flyout shows me the actual RGB values of whatever color I happen to be hovering over top of. Just to the left of the color palettes, we have Dockers. And Dockers give you extended capabilities or extended visibility to certain elements and objects on the page. So for example, you can see I have the Hints Docker opened up. This is one that's opened up by default. Now, if you're just getting started in CorelDRAW, it's an idea to keep that document or keep that, that Docker opened up. If you are upgrading from a previous version, then the other suggestion I make is go to your help menu. And I'm having the zoom panel drop down on me. Let's let that hide. Okay. I go to the help menu, down to highlight what's new, and I can select a previous version. So if I'm doing something, I've upgraded from CorelDRAW 2019 to 2021. That's a big jump. You'll notice that I have items that are in peach color. If I go to my menus, there's some items that have been highlighted here. And in the same in the toolbox, there'll be items in the toolbox. Let's go down to here that have been highlighted. So for example, the shadow tool. When I select the shadow tool, my Hints Docker has opened up and it now shows me how to use that particular tool. So a nice thing with the Hints Docker is it gives you an idea as to how to use the tool. I'm just going to turn off the highlight what's new. And you can see the hints Docker will change irregardless of whether I have that selected or not. So if I'm not sure how to use the spiral tool, I'll click on it. It tells me how to use it. If I don't quite understand what's happening in here, let's say, for example, I've got a rectangle selected. There's a webinar. I've got videos, had a little tutorial, all working with rectangles and creating basic shapes and that sort of thing. So those are Dockers. Dockers are accessible from the Windows menu down to Dockers, and they have them all listed here. Now, one more thing, on the Macintosh, we call them inspectors. So it's not a Docker, it's an inspector. So you have the object inspector, the hints inspector, and that sort of thing. I'm going to go back to my objects Docker. I'll tap my space bar. Here's another keyboard shortcut. Tap my space bar. It's going to return me from the rectangle tool to the pick tool. So the space bar will toggle you back and forth from whatever tool you have to the pick tool. If I select a tap space bar again, it goes back to my rectangle tool. That's a great way to switch back and forth. If I'm down here drawing something here, I don't have to scooch all the way over to my pick tool to select it. I can simply tap the space bar and I have my pick tools. That's pretty slick. Next, we have the welcome book. Now, the welcome book can be accessed from the little house here. If for some reason that's closed off, well, I still have the house and I can open it. Let's go back to my document. I can also access the welcome book from the help menu up here. It's actually called the welcome screen. Within the welcome book, I have the ability to get started. So this allows me to open up a new document, create a new document. I can open up some previous documents. I call this little section, Give It a Try. These are little quick tutorials that helps you learn a little bit more about the application or a specific feature. I can open an existing document or new from template. I also have access to more tutorials, join the community, quick reference card, user guide, and then of course, support is available down here. Next, we have Workspaces. Now, a workspace is the collection and organization of toolbars, menus, keyboard shortcuts. And we have a couple of different ones here. We have the default toolbar. I have a light toolbar, touch toolbar. So if you're using a tablet, if you're on the road and using a tablet or something like that, then you can use a touch workspace and it gives you a lot more real estate to actually draw on. And then we have some specialty workspaces, illustration, page layout, and of course, Adobe Illustrator. Now, the Adobe Illustrator workspace is ideal for those who are switching from Adobe Illustrator to CorelDRAW. And if there is anybody on this session that's doing that, underneath the Help menu, if I go down to Product Help, it's actually launching on my other monitor. Let me just pull this over. Under References, CorelDRAW for Adobe Illustrator users, here you have a couple of documents for comparing terminology, comparing tools, and then it talks about the Adobe Illustrator workspace. One more thing with respect to workspaces, on the Macintosh, prior to version 2021, it was not possible to customize the workspace at all. In 2021, you can customize the workspace, but it's limited. You're limited to adding certain tools and toolbars across the top in the standard toolbar, modifying that. And you can also modify keyboard shortcuts. You cannot create your own toolbars, move them around, and that sort of thing. The What's New section gives me, here's an introduction to CorelDRAW 2021. We have new perspective drawing, multi-page view, and I'll be showing you some of these in this session. The collaboration dashboard I will not be getting into. Multi-asset export. This is great if you want to create multiple types of files from a single file at a single time. You can certainly do that, and I'll show that shortly. Next, we have the learning section. And in here, things like, and these are typically webinars and tutorials, customizing your workspace, how to use templates in CorelDRAW, transparency tool. There's a number of different items here. You also have access to the Discovery Center. The web address for that is learn.corel.com. And there's a large number of both written and video tutorials on the Discovery Center. I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of this session, as well as another location where you can learn more about the application. Next, we have the store. In previous versions, that was called Get More. So we've rebranded that. It's now called the store. And this is typically where you get additional content for the application. Now, when you install the application or when you purchase the application, it comes with a number of clip art images, texture fills, bitmap fills, and that sort of thing. To access that stuff, over on the right-hand side, we have some different filters. So if I click on Content, this will allow me to access all of the free content that's included with the application. If I want to install the font pack, for example, over 1,000 fonts, I click on it and I click on Download. That's all there is to it. I'm going to click the back button. I'll deselect this. There is some stuff in here that's free, so I simply click on the free. Aftershot is an application that is given with the product. You can download that. And then these are Clipart Packs as well. If I take a look here, I'm just going to scroll down. This is my CorelDRAW Essentials training. And now that was created, that's updated to CorelDRAW 2018. Yeah, 2018, sorry, I had to think about that. And very shortly in the application, you'll see the CorelDRAW 2021 Essentials training. That was launched a couple of weeks back. So it's now live. It's 5 hours training. I'll talk about that at the end of this session. So that's it for the welcome screen. Let's go back to my file. Now, new document. We've changed something in here. When I go to File, down to New, this is my new document dialog box. In here, you'll notice that we have the name. So whatever name I type in here is going to be the name that will appear on the title bar at the top. There's a number of different presets. So if I'm doing something for web, if I want a default RGB, I can certainly select that. Number of pages, and then page view. So I can have a single page view, or I can have a multi-page view, and I'll show you that very shortly. So this is a new feature in 2021. And as you saw before, I can also set my primary color mode. For 95% of the people on this call, you'll be using RGB. Maybe even, unless of course you do screen printing and that sort of thing, in which case you'll probably want to use CMYK and then use spot colors with that. There's a number of different page sizes available. If you don't see a page size here that you use a lot, let's say, for example, a 10 by 13, if you're doing t-shirts or something like that, then you can create your own custom page size and add that. Rendering resolution by default is set to 300 dpi. Now, here's an important note. This rendering resolution is the resolution that bitmaps get rendered out at. So if you've got one of my other customers does large panel trucks, 58-foot trailers. And so if you're doing a large bitmap that's maybe 75 feet long or 40 feet long, whatever the case may be, you don't need a 300 dpi bitmap image to be rendered out. That's just going to really bog down the printer, create a very large file size, and just take forever to print. Typically, you would drop that down to 96 dpi. For sublimation work, that sort of thing, 150 dpi is more than adequate for something like that. I'm going to hit cancel. Let's go on to the next page. Another new feature that we've added, or one feature that we've added to CorelDRAW, is what's called auto fit. Now, CorelDRAW has been able to create multi-page documents since CorelDRAW 3. Probably about CorelDRAW 9, I think it was. No, earlier than that, maybe CorelDRAW 6. We've been able to create documents with mixed page sizes. So for example, in this document, I have an 8.5 by 11 page. I'm going to click on this icon. I'll add a new page to it. And this page, I want to have this as tabloid. I'll add another page to it. And this page, I want to have business card. So we have the ability to mix and match page sizes. If I'm going to create a design and I'm not sure what that page size is going to be, I can create my artwork. And let's go back to this here. And let me just copy this and I'll paste this onto, well, this is actually a business card. So let me go to my tabloid page. I'll paste that. And we have something called auto fit. Clicking on this icon, so with nothing selected, clicking on this icon will allow me to auto fit the page. I can set up a margin. Let's say I want a 0.25 inch, a quarter inch margin or 0.25. And I'll simply click auto fit. Automatically, it's resized the page to give me that. Well, that didn't give me a quarter inch margin, did it? 2.5, and then auto fit. There we are. So it's created a quarter inch margin all the way around my artwork. And this is now my page size. So this is a new feature in 2021, and it allows you to auto fit the page within the within whatever document you have. So if I look at the previous page, I've got my 9 by 16, and this is my 5.3 by 5.6 or 5.7. So great new feature. Next, we have the Pages Docker. This is a new Docker, and this allows me to navigate through multi-page documents. So from the Windows menu, I'll go down to Dockers, and then I select Pages. Over here, I can see thumbnails of all the pages in this particular document. I can increase the size of the thumbnails. I can also tell it I want to look at, here if I select multi-page view, I can now zoom out. I'm going to push my scroll wheel on the mouse. That switches me to the pan tool. And here I can actually pan around and I can take a look at all of the pages in this document. Over here, I have the ability of changing the settings. So for example, I want only maybe 4 columns across, and I want maybe a 2-inch spacing. Then I can certainly do that. And we have our pages now, and you can see the small page that I've created in here, and I can see all my pages. One of the nice things about this is that if I'm working on a file, I can actually take this element and drag and drop it between pages. And so it will allow me to edit across pages without having to cut from one page and paste onto the other page. In here, I better undo that. I need that back where it was. In here, I can also set whether I want them vertical, horizontal, or custom. So let's just go to this one, and then I'm going to switch to custom. And if I want to take this page here, I can move this over here. I can move these pages wherever I want in this particular view and go ahead and play with them, reorder them, that sort of thing. I can also reorder the pages by sliding them in the Docker up or down, and that will allow me to change the order of those. Okay, let me go back to single page view. And I'm still on my Pages Docker. I'll do F4 to zoom to the page. I'm done with this Docker. I'm going to close this off. And now I mentioned keeping my hands on the keyboard. I use number 1 to go back a page and number 2 to go forward a page. So I've customized those onto my keyboard. We'll talk about that at the end of this session on how to create custom keyboard shortcuts. But it's a lot easier for me to go back and forth in a multi-page document just by tapping those keys. Next, I want to talk about templates. We've modified the template dialog box. So from the welcome screen, under Get Started, I can either go New from Template, or from the File menu, New from Template up here. And that's going to open up the template dialog box for me. In here, I have the ability to take a look at some of the templates that come with the application. Now, in this dialog box, these thumbnails are kind of small. I can increase the size of this panel. I can also increase the size of the thumbnails and take a look at those. If I click on one, I'll get a larger view of it and see what that template looks like. When I create a file, So as we know, Conde has an awful lot of templates, and the beauty of them is that I would have to say 99, if not 100% of them are in CDR format, or certainly a file format that CorelDRAW can open up. When you open up a Conde template, once you've modified it, you go File, Save as Template, and it's going to bring it into this template dialog box. Under All Templates, once you've saved it, you can then go to My Templates, and this will allow you to access templates that you've created. So here's a Conde template that I've done a few years back. And so I've got a baby bib, and Sammy wants a baby bib. So I'll bring up Tammy's baby bib. I'll change it to Sammy. I'll make them blue, and I'm off to the races. So it saves an awful lot of time in redesigning. So if you've done a latte mug, or if you've done something that you do on a regular basis, maybe it's a chef's apron or something like that, you've got the template already designed with a previous design on it. It's going to save you time to bring that template back up. I'm going to hit cancel on this, and let's go back into my file. And now the object Docker. Let me, just a second, what are we doing here? Go back into my objects doc. That'll have to populate again. My apologies. I should have done that before starting this session. Okay, so the objects docker basically allows me to see what's in a specific document. We've modified this in, stay open. We've modified this in CorelDRAW 2018, where you can now see visual representation of what the element is that you have selected. So if I select this bird, come down here, expand this, you can see the various parts in here. Rather than being just a little squiggly line as it used to be, call it tilde, it now looks like what the actual object is. Another nice thing is I now have the ability to search. So if I've given my objects in here names, I can type that in here, and you can see I can now select all of my elements that I've labeled as flower. So it gives you the ability to find elements in a fairly complex design. If you're doing architecture or CAD type drawings, then it's a great way to find elements like that. Selecting and aligning objects. So selecting objects, of course, is done with the pick tool. And it's simply a matter, if I want to select an element, I'll single click on it. That's all there is to it. If I have a number of objects that are not grouped together, I can left click and drag and do what we call a marquee select. I'll let the mouse button go. I have this all selected, and you can see I have 319 objects selected. If I left click and drag and hold the Alt key down, whatever this marquee touches will be selected. So I haven't gone all the way through, but those are the elements that it's actually selected. I must completely encompass an object in order to have it selected. If I don't, or if I can't, hold down the Alt key, and that will allow you to select that element. Now, double clicking, and you can see here the double clicking tools. If I double click the pick tool, it'll select everything on the page. That's a quick way to delete everything. If I double click the rectangle tool, it will draw a page frame around my page. If I have a group of objects selected and I do a shift double click, that will create a frame around whatever is selected. I'm sorry. Somebody has unmuted their microphone. Is there a question?
I just gave those.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
002. 1.
I'm sorry, I have a conversation going on. Can you hear me?
2. 8 0
Hello?
0.
Hello, can you hear me? It looks like we've been interrupted by a phone call potentially.
No. Yeah.
Hey, Keith.
Yeah. Can and I-
Hello.
You should be able to mute her on your side.
I can?
Yeah, if you're the moderator, you should be
Oh,
able to.
I'm not the moderator, no. That'd be Sprite.
Okay, Sprite.
But I
can-
think the call may have been ended. I'm not sure Sprite is here. He's with us right now. All right, it sounds like it might have ended. I'll continue. Okay, so as I was saying, with the if I select a number of objects and I hold the Shift key down, I can double click the rectangle tool, and that will create a frame around whatever's selected. That's a great little tip if you're bringing in some photographs and you want to put quick little white frames around them. Shift double click select the bitmap, Shift double click with the rectangle tool, and then change the line weight and the line color. Now, I might have wanted something a little bit bigger, but you get the idea. It's a great way to draw a quick little frame around an object. Here I have and let me just delete this. Here I have a group of objects. And with this group of objects, if I need to select something within it, I can hold the Control key down and click. And that will select an object within a group of objects. If I hold Control plus Shift, I can select multiple objects within a group of objects. And I'm going to give you another keyboard shortcut. This is the Control key by itself. If I use the Control key while clicking on a color in the color palette, I'm going to add 10% of that color to whatever's selected. So I'm clicking this multiple times. I've done it 3 or 4 times. I think I shifted up to the green. But whatever color I click on, here, let's make it purple. And then I'm going to go up and I'm going to click on the white and add 10% white to that. That's actually lightening that color for me. Pay attention. So Control click allows you to select an object within a group, and then a Control Shift click can select multiple objects within the group. And then the Control with a color in the color palette allows you to add a percentage. Here's another little quick one for the color palette trip. If I click and hold, I'm holding my left mouse button down, I'll get a little flyout, and this is HSL, so hue, saturation, and lightness based on that primary color here. So I'll click on this, and I can select that particular shade of green if I wanted to. Another way to select objects is by using the Tab key, and the Tab key will select objects in the order in the reverse order that they were created. So here, for example, I'm going to hit the Tab key. Actually, I want to do a Shift. I'm going to select the small one first, and I'll use the Tab key. Let's go blue, tab, yellow, tab, red, tab, purple, tab, and then orange. So using the Tab key allows me to select that. That's advantageous in that if I have a complex design like this, and maybe I want to select some different elements in here, I can cycle through this using the Tab key and select these various elements. I'm going to do a Shift F4 to zoom out. I'll scroll to that portion. Now that I have these selected, a couple of the alignment keys, hold the Shift key down. I'll click on this, Shift, select these. I've got the Shift key held down. Now I'm going to show you alignment, and the alignment is based on the last object selected. So I'm going to select this ellipse last, the purple ellipse. It's T for top, B for bottom, L for left, R for right, C for center, and E for even. I'm going to do a couple of Control Z's. Control Z is the undo key. I call it the oops key. So I've undone that. I'm going to select the blue one last. So again, Shift, select these elements, doesn't matter what order, based on the last object selected, T for top, B for bottom, L for left. You notice they're all aligned to the left of that blue, R for right, C for center, and E for even. Now, one final tool I want to show, or one final keyboard shortcut I want to show here. I'm going to hold the Shift key down. When I resize an object with the Shift key down, it does it from the center out. I want to select objects underneath this. Maybe this is a lens. I'm going to create a transparency out of this. I'll just make it a uniform transparency. And now I'll tap my space bar to get my pick tool back. And I want to select this object right here. Currently, I have the blue one selected. If I hold the Alt key down, it acts as a digger tool. I'll do a single click and it's now selected the object below that. So I'll do it in the center, and you can watch over here with the Alt key held down. I'm just clicking, same spot, single click, and it keeps digging down one level at a time. You want to say one layer, but those aren't layers, so it's clicking one object at a time. Okay, F4 to zoom to my page, and let's go to the next page. I'm going to talk a little bit about copy and duplicate. Now, I see one question there. I'm going to tackle that right now. What was the keyboard shortcut for adding white to an element? I've got this selected, hold the control key down. I'm going to left click. Remember, left click changes the fill, right click changes the outline. I'm going to left click on my white, and that's going to add a 10% white to that. Click again, and the more I do it, the more white it adds to that. Okay, again, F4. I want you to watch my cursor. I'm going to do a Control C to copy. And you saw my cursor turn to the hourglass for a brief second. What that's doing is it's actually taking the information and copying it to the Windows clipboard. Now, when I do a Control V, again, watch my cursor. For a brief second, just a flash, it was an hourglass. And what it was doing there is taking the information from the Windows clipboard and pasting it back into CorelDRAW. And so that now gave me my copy. The drawback with that process is that it now has a temp file in my temp folder. The more time I do a copy, paste, an import, export, or a file print, it builds up temp files into the system. These excessive temp files is like hair in a drain. It just plugs up the entire system. So rather than copy paste, what I prefer to do is a Control D, which is duplicate. So I'm going to select this element, Control D, and that has duplicated it. I'm going to take this and I can move it wherever I want to. Now, when I'm moving an element, if I hold the Control key down, it's going to constrain it for me. So I'm going to put this right here. If I do a Control D again, CorelDRAW is going to remember that. This is what we call a smart duplicate, and it will place it the exact same distance from the previous. And I can keep going right across the page, creating objects. Maybe I want to do a pattern or something like that. If I marquee select this, and I do a Control D, I want you to take a look at the property bar. This is my XY coordinate, and that's based on the position of this object on the page. This is the size of the object that I currently have selected. So it's 13.614 inches across, and it's 1.25 inches high. I want to move these down, and I want to have a 1/4 inch space between them. So in the Y position, I want to go minus 1.25 because my object is 1.25 inches high, minus 0.25 because I want a 1/4 inch spacing. And now I'll hit enter. It's now pasted a row with a 1/4 inch gap, and I can do a Control D. It'll remember that. And so very quickly, I can start to create an array of objects with very precise measurements or spacing. I'm going to do a Control Z a number of times just to undo these. And one more thing, I think I have a duplicate there, yeah. One more thing I want to point out, I'll do a Control D. In here, I can do plus 1 inch plus 8 millimeters. So I can mix and match units of measure as well. So this is 8 millimeters apart. I can also, over here, maybe I want to go plus 25%. Oops, what did we do there? Maybe I did 250% or something. I didn't catch what I actually did there. Shift F4 to zoom into that. Let's try that again. Plus, excuse me, plus 20%. I'm not sure what happened there. Anyway, it's really big, too big. Let's go ahead and move on. So you understand copy versus duplicate. One other thing to make a point of is when I'm duplicating objects, I want to make sure that my duplicate distance offset is 0, 0. With nothing selected, it's these numbers on the page. By default, it's 0.25 inch. First thing I do is I change that to 0, 0, so I know it's completely over top of where it is. There's somebody else on the very popular in the YouTube, Doug Green, and I'm sure a lot of you people know Doug Green and have seen his videos. He uses a smart duplicate in a rather unique way. He wants to move this over 7 inches, then he's just going to come up here and he's going to change that to 7. If he now selects this and does a duplicate, he's moved it over 7 inches. So he uses this in a little bit different way. That's one of the nice things about CorelDRAW. There's many different ways to do the same thing. I was thinking the other day, how many different ways can I change the color of an object? And I think I've got 6 different methods I could use to change the color of an actual object in CorelDRAW. So it's a very, very flexible application. And because you can do it so many different ways, it's very easy to learn. Okay, shape editing. So there's a number of shape editing tools available. I'm going to select this element. I'll do a shift, select this. You'll notice that, well, first of all, if I select this element, my interactive property bar gives me things that I can do with ellipses. If I select more than one object, I now have shaping commands. The first one is combine, and combine will create a knockout where objects overlap. And the resultant object is based on the last object selected. So I'm going to do a Control-Z to undo that. I'm going to select the polygon, then I'm going to select this modified ellipse, and I'll hit combine again. And you'll notice that my resultant object takes on the fill or the properties of the last object selected. I'm going to do an undo to that, and I'll click on this one, actually leave it like that. I'll click on the next one, which is Weld. And think of metalwork, machine shop. Weld will actually take 2 objects and weld it as one, make it a solid object. If this was down a little bit and I weld it, you can see what that would look like. And the final one I want to show is simplify. So if I simplify this, it acts as a cookie cutter. This shape is cut out of the pink, and that shape is cut out of the purple. When we draw with objects in CorelDRAW, there's 3 types of nodes. I'm going to grab my shape tool, and you can see I have the start node and the end node. I can double click on the line or do a single click, it's added a node for me. Double click adds a node, and if I double click a node, I'll delete that node. I can select the node and change the type of node. That's now a curve. And typically a curve node allows me to create smooth shapes. I have the symmetrical node. Just a minute, let's try this again. Symmetrical node, the handles move in unison, this is the smooth node. And the symmetrical node. Symmetrical node, the handles move in unison with each other. That's typically the way the nodes work. And it allows you to draw an object. And then you come in with the shape tool and modify that curve, change the properties of it, and that sort of thing. All right, if we look at my time, I think my quit time is 4:30, if I'm not mistaken. If somebody can just put that in the chat session, just to confirm that is my stop time, 4:30. So the crop tool allows me to crop an object, simple and straightforward. I'm going to just right click, I'm going to select lock toolbars. What that does, it toggles it off and on. I can now come into the crop tool and I can actually take this and drag this on the screen. If there's tools that you use a lot and you don't want to have to go all the way over there all the time, just pull them out onto the screen. A very common question is, I want to crop this out. So left click and drag, I crop it, and now I've lost my entire design. This was a common call we used to get. I'm going to do a Control-Z to undo that. The reason that happened is because CorelDRAW thinks that I want to crop this area from my design. If I select my pick tool, marquee select this, tap my space bar again. I'm now telling it that I want to crop from this object. And if I double click, it's cropped it for me and it's given me that. Now that was a vector object, and you can see if I tap the space bar, return to the pick tool, it's still a vector object. It's a group of 18 objects in here. Okay, thank you, Dee. The next one over is the knife tool. Now, I'm going to move this up a little bit, tap my space bar, marquee select this, tap my space bar again to give me my crop tool, or my cut tool, my knife tool. In the knife tool, I have a couple of different options. I can do a straight or a 2-point line cut. I can do a freehand cut. I can use the Bezier. I can autofill nodes. Here I have the ability of creating a gap or an overlap. And now where this is useful is if you do embroidery, for example, and you want to create a split front. Those that don't do embroidery, if you picture a baseball jersey, Red Sox, Blue Sox, whatever the case may be, the logo goes across the front chest. And usually these shirts are buttoned down or snap down shirts. So your design has to be cut in half. You need to have a bit of an overlap so that when you apply the applique or apply the embroidery to it, you can wrap it around and tuck it under on both sides so it looks like a continuous logo. I'm going to create an overlap, and I can set my overlap for this. I'm just going to go 0.25 inches. I guess that's 0.25 inch. And if I left click and drag, let the mouse button go, you can see that I can now select the area that I've cut. I'll drag that straight down, and it didn't do it. Let's try this again. Select that, knife, overlap, 0.25. Hold the control key down, I want it straight down, and then I let that go. I'm going to click up here, and if I drag this straight down, you can see I have a 1/4 inch overlap. So now we can tuck that in behind. I'll use a gap if I'm doing, maybe I'm doing perf vinyl on a window and it's covering two panes of window. And I've got the stanchion in the center, the aluminum upright in the center, that I have to create a gap for that. That's a situation where you do that. The next is virtual segment delete. Now, if you wanted to delete from an ellipse, I want to cut a piece out of this. Previously, I'd have to convert this to a curve, add a node where I want to make the cut, add 2 nodes where I want to make the cuts, break the nodes apart, break the entire object apart, and then delete that element. With the virtual segment delete tool, all I need to do is dictate where my segment is, delete it, and then I can delete my line. So now I've effectively broken that line. Virtual segment delete tool, again, allows me to delete paths, and I don't have to worry about putting nodes in there. I can just go through and delete whatever paths that I want. If I hold the Alt key down and I draw, it'll create an irregular shaped marquee. Whatever this marquee touches will be deleted. So that's the virtual segment delete tool. Okay, the next one down is, and actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to take a quick pause, take a look at some of these questions before I get too far into it. Duplicate, do you paste after duplicating? Do you need to learn the commands you can use? Do you not need to learn the commands? Oh, no, you don't have to use keyboard shortcuts. You can certainly use the icons and whatnot. You also have the ability, if there's a particular icon, let's say, for example, if I go to my view menu, there's no keyboard shortcut for wireframe or for normal view. I've reset my defaults before going in here, and so I automatically change those. I haven't done it yet because I'll be showing you how to do it. I go into wireframe quite a bit, so I tap the letter W on my keyboard. I don't have to use keyboard shortcuts. I just find it a lot easier if my hands are on the keyboard. How much is the upgrade for Corel? I don't have the pricing on that. You'd be best off to check with your sales rep at Condi. Is it possible to go to the welcome page without exit of Corel. You don't have to exit Corel to get the welcome screen. It's right there. I mean, I'm still in the application. How can I remove the background? I'll be getting to that. You cut out objects land. Is that the same tool that lets you cut out objects? What? The soccer banner. I'm not sure what you're asking there. Yes, virtual segment delete is one of my favorites. Great for doing larger pieces and printing on a smaller footprint printer and put back together on substrate. Yes, there's a couple ways you can do that. We do have tile printing. You can also use the graph paper tool, which I'll be showing you. Learning shortcuts make my brain hurt. Completely understand. If you go to tools, I'll show it later. Go to tools, customization. There's the ability to print out all your keyboard shortcuts so you can have them at hand, even the customized ones you've created. When I start a new file, it makes everything tabloid. All you need to do is from the file menu, new document, and here you're going to select letter. There's your letter size page. If I, for example, I'm going to just to show you something here, I'll click OK. Now, if I create a new document, it's remembering the last setting. So long as you go in and say, I want 8.5 by 11, it'll always stick with 8.5 by 11. Okay, and the last one I'm going to take a look at is, can I import my art, JPEG, PNG, and convert to vector? Thank you. I'll be showing that as well. Yes. Okay. Enough of the questions for now. I'll slip back into them in a few minutes, or maybe towards the end of the session. I've got 40 minutes left. All right. So looking at some of the interactive tools. It's on the interactive tool flyout. So underneath my drop shadow, I'm going to click and hold. Let's bring that out on the screen. I can close this one off. I'm not going to go in order here. Blend is the first one I'll take a look at. Blend allows you to create an image or an object that tweens from one object to the next. So it's actually created multiple objects here based on the number I have selected up here. I could go 99, I can go more than 99, and that would create a really smooth transition. I have the ability of changing the way that goes. I can also break this apart and change just the color and that sort of thing. When I have something like this, it creates what we call a control object. Now the control object is the beginning and the end. If I select this end here, I can come down and I can make this, let's say red, or I can make it green. And it's going to affect how the rest of that blend appears. If I select the last object and make it blue, you can see how it's done the blending on that. I don't know if you remember, I might be dating myself, but string art used to make string art designs. I can take an object like this, and let's go like this. I'm going to right-click on the yellow. I'll right-click on the red. And then I'm going to use my blend, and I'm going to blend from one object to the next. And then I'm going to come here and I'm going to change my number of steps. So you can create some pretty cool little designs with that. Anyway. The next we have is contour. Contour is typically used if you want to create a path or an outline around an object. I shouldn't use the term outline because we know that we can right click and that will add an outline for me. But clicking on the contour tool, and I can click and drag out. Now I've created a contour with 2 steps to the outside, and this is the spacing between those steps. So I can make that larger or smaller. I can increase the number of steps. I can also make it go to the inside or to the center. Now, the difference between the inside and the center is if I do it, let me show you on a rectangle. If I do a contour to the center, it's going to do however many steps it needs based on the size. If I simply do to the inside, then I can control the number of steps that I want. And then of course to the outside, it will do X number of steps to the outside. And there's other features you can do with that as well that I won't be able to get into today. The next we have is the envelope tool, or sorry, the envelope tool. I'm going to select this element. You'll notice that we have nodes around here. I can click and drag and I can pull on this. This hasn't really created a nice smooth shape. I'm gonna do a Control Z to undo that. If I double click this node, I can now pull down and it creates a more smooth flow for this. Same with the top one. I'll double click to remove it and then I can create that. If I wanted to, I could double click and add nodes wherever I want and change the shape of that. Extrude allows me to extrude an element, give it a three-dimensional look. I'll zoom right in on that. And on the interactive property bar, I have the ability to adding shading. I can add color to it. So I can go from red to black. Maybe I want to go from red to yellow. I can certainly do that as well. Excuse me for a second. And let's just zoom back out. Now, we've added in 2020, we've added a new drop shadow. It's called the inside drop shadow. So my standard drop shadow is my drop shadow. We have now moved it to the interactive property bar, and this allows me to create a standard drop shadow. So I'll click and drag, and you can see the shadow effect on that. I can change the color of the shadow. I can change the opacity, the feathering, and a whole lot of other stuff to that. I'm going to select my inside drop shadow. I'll select this element. And there's just a slight little tug on that gives me the ability, this is a three-dimensional object. And what I've actually done is I've created a drop shadow on top of this element. And so that allows me to add contour to it or an effect to it. If I select the drop shadow and I bring it down quite a bit, it now looks like it's cut out of the object behind. It's just a matter of the way you position the shadow. And the final shadow I'm going to show is the block shadow. So from the interactive property bar, I'll select this. Sorry, from the interactive effects tool, I'll select this and I'll click and drag. I can create a little bit of an offset with this. I can adjust my offset up here. There's a number of other things I can do. One of them, which is expand the block shadow. I can generate from the outer object. This is removing holes. Here I can simplify. I kind of like the simplify effect. Once I've done that, I'm going to go to Object, Break Drop Shadow Apart. I'll tap my space bar to give me my pick tool. I'll select this element. I'll delete that. And so I'm left with this as a potential design element. Okay, we've got a fair amount to cover, and I'm not sure I'll be able to get all the way through, so I may have to skip over a couple of slides. This we're talking a little bit about lenses, and on the next slide is transparencies. Very quickly, from the Windows menu, go down to Dockers, and I'm going to go down to Effects. And in here I have lenses. As you can see, well, currently it says no lens. I'm going to select this magnifying glass, and I'm just going to move this on top of my fly. You'll notice that I've now magnified the head on the fly. That's because this white element in here is an actual lens that I've created. So if I hold the Control key down and click on this, I've actually selected the lens within this clipart image. And you can see I have a magnifying lens. I can select it to heat map. There's a number of different lenses in here that I can control and add some interesting effects. I'll leave that like that and let you guys play with that. Transparency, I'm going to close this off. You've seen me create a transparency of a single object. I can create a transparency from a bitmap as well. I'll select this, hold the Shift key down. I'm going to select this element, L for left alignment, B for bottom. I'll deselect, I'm going to select this, and now I'm going to select my transparency tool. Click and drag, and allows me to create a transparency on that top element, and it gives the illusion that this is actually going back into the forest. You'll notice that my cursor is an hourglass. What CorelDRAW is doing right now is it's backing up. It's creating an auto backup. By default, it's set for every 20 minutes. A word of caution or something to keep in the back of your mind. If you see this happen with CorelDRAW, let it do its thing. If I start to go through and do all sorts of different tasks while it's trying to write a file, then it may cause instability in the application. The other thing you want to make sure is that you're not backing up to a network drive. So when you open up a file, if you're opening it from the network drive, save it to your local drive first, and then work on your file and then copy it back to the network drive. Otherwise, it's trying to back up across the network, which is a lot slower, can take longer, and result in potentially more issues and more damaged files. So just something to keep in mind. Perspective is something else that we've added recently, the ability to add perspective to a bitmap. Previously, it was only available for vector objects. I'm going to position this right here. Go to my effects menu. Nope, objects menu. Down to perspective and add perspective. I can take these corner nodes and move them into position. And here I have the ability, I've now given the illusion that this is actually on that billboard. I can do the same with text, but again, time, I want to move on. So text basics. There's two types of text in CorelDRAW. The first is artistic text. Artistic text, picture a box of cereal. Let's call them cornflakes. The word cornflakes or the word catalogs is going to be artistic text. The contest rules or the list of ingredients is going to be paragraph text. Artistic text, I have the ability of doing various things like enveloping it, arcing it around an object. Paragraph text, think of word processing, text formatting capabilities. I can add drop caps, I can do bullets, I can do indenting, I can do page numbering, and line numbering and that sort of thing. Fitting text to a path is fairly simple and fairly straightforward. Originally, it was text and then down to fit text to path, then point to my path. Much quicker to right click. I want to see that bullseye cursor, let the mouse button go, and then fit text to path. You may notice down here, I have a little red glyph. That allows me to reposition the text. Zoom out a little bit. You'll notice that I have that red beam. That's an indication that I'm perfectly centered at the 12 o'clock position. If I select this, I can no longer right click and drag because this is now a complex object. So instead, it's text, fit text to path, and now I'm going to move to where that path is, and I'll click. Very common question is, how do I flip this over? Interactive property bar, I want to mirror horizontally, mirror vertically, and now I can grab this little glyph and move that back into position. And you can see the little tooltip pop up that says I'm 0.375 inches away. I would have that same thing up here. That way I know that I'm properly spaced in there. Okay. Variable font support. Now, we've added variable font support in CorelDRAW 2020, and a variable font is basically it's an amalgamation of Microsoft and Apple fonts. They've come up with these variable type fonts, and in CorelDRAW 2020, we've added this icon to the toolbar. This then allows me to see, and let me just move this down over here. This allows me to see some of the capabilities of this font. When I click on this, I'll get a drop down and I can change some of the parameters of this font. And you'll see what's happened here. It's given sort of like an outline type font quite easily. I can do some rounding on it. Maybe adjust the slab. So once I get something I like, kind of like that, if I come back into here, for me to dial up those same settings might be a little bit tricky. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this, right click and drag, and I want to see that up and down beam. Let the mouse button go, and I want to copy all properties. So I've now applied that same parameters, the same properties to this piece of text. Next, I'm going to talk about I'm going to watch my timing here, 21:37, okay. Next, I want to talk about the font manager. So we've had a new enhancement to the Corel Font Manager 2021, and that is the ability to save your collections. So, well, what's a collection? Let's start at the beginning. If I take a look at this here, this allows me to add a folder. These are what we call watched folders. Now, let me just expand this down. These are what we call watched folders. Now, by default, Corel puts the fonts in your Documents folder, Corel Content, and then Fonts. That's where we put fonts by default. You can put fonts wherever you want. I've got a folder here called AB Template Fonts. AB is one of my customers, and they deal with templates a lot. And they have a set 104 different fonts that they use all the time. Those are in there. I didn't want to install those into Windows. I've also got large font collection, and in here I have quite a number of fonts in there. I'm not going to let it go all the way through, but as you can see, so far I've got 44,000 files in there. I've got a large number of fonts in that folder. Excuse me. In here, these are those folders. They're what we call a watched folder. Any font that has a green bar on the right-hand side, those are fonts that are installed. Anyone that's yellow, they're not installed. And I can scroll through here and you can see I have quite a few fonts that are not installed. You may have seen a gray bar appear. That's a font family. So green is font installed, yellow is not installed. I can take any one of these fonts and I can right-click and I can add it to a collection. And these are the collections I currently have. I'm going to put that into sublimation. I can create a new collection by simply clicking on this icon. And that will allow me to create a collection. Let's call it Condi. And then if I come back up to my fonts, I want this one in the Condi collection. And I want this one in the Condi collection. And maybe I'll scroll down quite a bit. And I want this one, hold the control key down, this one, this one, this one, right click, and put those in the Condi collection. So I've got a number of different fonts, and I can look at these various folders and see what fonts I have in these collections. I now have the ability, new to 2021, to export these collections. So if I have to reinstall the application, or I've got two graphic designers, and I want each designer to have the same collection of fonts, then I can do that as well. I also have the ability of looking at some of the different filters. Maybe I only want to see the fonts that are installed, or I only want to see fonts that are not installed. Maybe I want to look at bold fonts, or width. I have styles, character range, open type, a number of different things. Maybe I want Asian fonts. All that's capable within the font manager. Another nice thing about it is when I come into here, into CorelDRAW, I'm going to select this piece of text. In my drop-down, I have this funnel. It's a filter. When I click on my filter, here's my AB fonts. Here's my bars. Here's my font, other fonts folder. Here are my Condi fonts. When I click on Condi fonts, over here, I'm only seeing Condi fonts. That's all I'm seeing. So I don't have to scroll through 700 or 7,000 fonts to find the one I want. I do a lot of engraving, or maybe I do a lot of wedding invites and that sort of thing. I want to take a look at my script fonts so I can go through and I can pick which font I want to use for any particular design. So it's a great way to speed up the design process and to create, to create these collections. You do posters, you do sublimation on mugs, you do laser engraving. So create separate font folders for those fonts that you use. Clipart, I'll make it quick on this one. So with the Clipart, we go to Windows, Dockers, Corel Connect. Corel Connect allows me to access my Clipart images, and it's simply a matter of clicking and dragging from my Corel Connect onto the page. When I go into the Get More, or into the store rather, you saw where you can get the Clipart. It's obtained through there. I'm not sure why that one didn't come in. I'm not going to worry about it. You've been doing design for some time. You've got previous versions of CorelDRAW. You have the Corel Clipart CDs from older versions. Copy them to a hard drive. Under all content, go to Add New. I'm going to click on Create Alias. I'm going to browse to my Pictures folder. I'm going to go into Stock Images. I'll go into iStock, and I'll select Folder. What that's going to do now is these are all the images that are in that iStock folder. So I can now use any one of these images for a design that I'm working on. Just a matter of clicking and dragging, and I now have access to that. Power Clip. I think most of you have seen Power Clip before. Let me ungroup that. I can right click and drag, let the mouse button go, and Power Clip inside. I need to edit this a little bit, so I'm going to hold the Control key down. I'll click on this, and this will allow me to reposition that. If I Control click outside, it's finished the editing. You talked about, or somebody mentioned a question about being able to take a larger image and break it down into smaller images to sublimate. You can certainly do that. This particular image is 4x6. For argument's sake, and to answer that question at the same time, I'm going to come into my graph paper tool, and I'm going to make this 3 by 1. I'm going to create, actually, if I go like this, I can right click and drag, Power Clip inside. Under here, I'm going to center. I'm going to right click to turn off those outlines, and I'm going to ungroup. I now have 3 separate elements that I can go ahead and print and then piece them together or sublimate them together. This same process can be used with the graph paper tool to create a grid if I want to sublimate these onto ceramic tiles to make a mural. I'm sorry for zooming along too fast here, or too quickly here. I think I might have spent a little bit too much time at the beginning going into too much detail and too much depth. I want to trace an element, select the bitmap. So customer says, I want my logo on a t-shirt. Where do you get the logo? Well, it's on my website. We all know what that looks like. Take the logo, go into Power Trace. I usually use Clipart. It's going to open it up for me. It's going to take this image. It's removed the background. It's also changed the all these objects to vector. A nice thing in here, I'm going to group by color. I'm going to go to my Colors tab. And in here, I can see some colors that are fairly close. I'll hold the Control key down, merge those. So I'm reducing the number of colors. Another nice thing in here is for anybody who does vinyl cutting or screen printing, I can hit the drop down and I can select a spot color palette, and that will already convert those to spot colors for me. Or I can simply click OK. If I move this off and I ungroup this, you'll see that all my green objects are together. I'll move this guy out of the way. My green objects are together, my orange objects, and it's simply a matter of taking one of these elements. I can double click on it, and I can change the color model in here very quick and very easy to whatever I want to. Another common question that I get is, how do I create a cut line around a bitmap image? I want to do a laser cut or whatever the case may be. Here's my bitmap image. Use Power Trace. Going to convert this to Clipart. And excuse me, the trick in here, if you will, is just drop your number of colors down, go down to about 3 colors. It's not really super important as to how many colors. The important thing is that on the Settings tab, I want to make sure that I leave my original image there. So remove the background color. I have the ability to remove overlap. Delete original. I do not want to select that. I'll click OK. With this object selected, I go to my Objects menu, down to Shaping, to Boundary. So I've now created a hairline outline around that. I'm going to right-click, and that's changed the outline to red. If I hold the Alt key down, I'll do a single click here. That's selected the element for elephant for me. I'll hit delete, and you can see that I now have a cut line around the perimeter of the elephant rather, that I can go ahead and sublimate this onto maybe a piece of wood and then cut it out on the engraver. Maybe if I'm making a keychain or something like that. I do want to answer questions. I'm going to snap ahead a little bit just to show a couple of things. This upsampling is new in 2020. We've also added this feature to Paint Shop Pro. We used to be able to use Photo Zoom, which would allow you to upsample. For those that don't yet have 2020, and earlier versions of CorelDRAW have something called Photo Zoom in Photo Paint. You can certainly access that. But in CorelDRAW, from the Bitmap menu, if we go down to Resample, now typically you shouldn't resize a bitmap any more than about 30%. I'm going to go 500%. And I'm going to click OK. So there's my image at 500%. You remember the Alt key allows me to dig down. Hold the Alt key down. I'm going to click right here, and I'm going to bring this image to the front. There's my original image. I had two copies on top of each other. There's my original image, and here's my new image. Original image is a 4:7. My new image is 21:35, and the quality is beautiful for something that size. So if you need to upsample a bitmap, that's the way to go. The Cutout Lab, I'm going to select this. The question was, how do I remove a background? I'm going to right click and I'll select Edit Bitmap. That's going to open up this image in Photo Paint. Sprite, if you can hear me, can you unmute your microphone, please? So
Yes.
in here, Sprite, I'm due to stop at 4:30, correct?
Yes.
Is there anybody after me?
No, you're the last one.
Can I go longer?
Certainly.
Okay, perfect. That's beautiful. Thank you. Okay, so you had asked about removing the background. With the image selected, I'm going to go to my image menu and down to Cutout Lab. The Cutout Lab allows me to, I'm just going to maximize this and zoom in a little bit more. Picture this is a highlighter marker. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. It should be a little bit quicker for me to go around. Now, of course, the finer this brush is, the more detail I can get. And I'm just going to go around the perimeter of this. And what I'm doing is I'm isolating the area, I'm showing the area that I actually want to cut out. I'm not being super careful. And now I'm going to use my fill tool to preserve or protect this area. I can click on Preview, bottom left-hand corner. And now I can come through here and I can see some areas that I missed. So I'm going to brush back in this area here. If I happen to go out too far, and I can reduce the size of the brush. You get the idea. So I can brush this back in, and I'm just going to be very quick about this. I do have permission to go a little bit longer, but I don't want to take advantage of that. So I'm still going to be cognizant of my time here. So I can brush this out. I can come back here. I can brush in areas that I've missed. If I find it hard to see the detail here, under background, I can select grayscale. Much easier to see objects there. You get the idea what I'm doing. I can also select black matte or white matte, and it will allow me to basically clean up the area. Once I'm happy with it, simply click OK in the bottom right-hand corner. It returns me to Photo Paint. I'll click on Finish Editing, say yes to saving changes. It closes the file down. I'll just close Photo Paint down, returns me back into CorelDRAW with the background removed. Now, Digital cameras these days are really quite good. So as far as color balance, it's they're pretty spot on with the CDS color cells in the cameras and the color monitoring and the metering and that sort of thing. Older cameras, a little bit different story. Or we used to deal with Kodachrome and Ektachrome films, which would cause some pretty bizarre color casts. If you have an image that has a pretty poor color cast, from the Bitmap, effects menu down to Adjust, Image Adjustment Lab, and I can also access this from within PhotoPaint. In here, I have the ability to change the temperature. So I can make that a little bit warmer. Well, that's obviously too warm. And you can see, you'll get the live preview on screen. Maybe I want to bump up the saturation a bit. I'm going to take a snapshot, and that's going to create a recording of this particular setting. Brightness, contrast, I want a bit more contrast. Maybe I want to bring out highlights. And I can just play around with these settings in here. I'll create another snapshot. And I can go back and forth and check which one I think looks the best. Once I'm happy with it, I'll click OK. And I've now tweaked my image to give me the ideal image before I go ahead and sublimate that out. Did we miss a slide? I missed this slide, so let's just talk very briefly about this. This is more of a watch out thing. When you're dealing with bitmaps can be very weighty in file size and can really slow the system down. I'm going to select this element here. You'll see that I have a bitmap. It's 150 dpi. I can come through and I can grab my shape tool and I can select these nodes because I don't need that. Let me just zoom in a little bit more into this. I don't need the entire design. I only want a small portion of it. This is not cropping the image. It's reducing the bounding box, and it's basically creating what we call a soft mask. I mean, I could come in here as well, and I can grab my eraser tool, and I can create an irregular shape for the bitmap if I wanted to. While it looks good, my large bitmap is still a large bitmap, even though it looks small. In fact, if I grab my shape tool and select these nodes, I can pull them back out, and you can see I have my design there. If you need to resize a bitmap or reshape a bitmap like this, once you've done that, go to Bitmap, convert to Bitmap, set it for whatever resolution you want. Sublimation, 150 dpi, 200 dpi should be adequate, and simply click OK to that. That now has gotten rid of all of this excess weight in the file. The other very common thing is a user will take a file. You get these 14 or 20 megapixel cameras taking these massive images. I'm creating a catalog of my products. I do keychains, I do baby clothing. And so I'm going to take a shot of the baby's bib, maybe the onesie, and I'm going to create a little catalog that my customers can pick from. I'm going to take that image from my digital camera and I'm going to size it down. I only need it to be, an 1.5 inches by 2 inches sort of thing. And there we have it. Status bar says that's 1500 dpi. There's no way you need something that large, especially if you're outputting your catalog to a digital printer or a PDF file. Bitmap, convert to bitmap, 150 dpi, and I've now dropped all that excessive weight of the file. Same goes for rotating. A bitmap is an array of pixels, horizontal and vertical. If I take a bitmap, and this particular one is in a power clip, if I take a bitmap and I rotate it, I'm rotating those pixels. So when I go and send this to the printer, when it goes and tries to rip this, it's taking a look at this and say, hey, wait a minute, something kind of wonky with these pixels. I now have to rotate these. So it's going to create a larger spool file, and it's going to take longer to print. If you have to do that, bitmap, convert to bitmap, and click OK. The pixels are now in horizontal and vertical grid, and it will print much quicker. Okay, let's go back to where we were. Excuse me. So non-destructive effects are effects that we've added into CorelDRAW 2019 is when we introduced those. If I go to my effects menu and down to, oh, I don't know, let's go to creative. I'll go to fabric, and I've added quilt to fabric to it, quilt effect. Go back up to effects, down to distort, and maybe mesh warp. And I'll click OK. And then one more, I'll go effects, down to blur, and I'll add a Gaussian blur. Okay, now I've applied these effects to this object. I've said it's non-destructive. If I go into my property bar, in here I have an effects tab. In here I can see the effects that I've actually applied. What would this look like without the mesh warp, but with the Gaussian? I can turn the visibility of that off. So I've removed the mesh warp from it, and I'm only looking at it with the fabric and the Gaussian. Maybe I don't want to see the fabric, but I do want to see the mesh warp and the Gaussian blur. So it allows me to, and I can also delete those, or if I click on the pencil, I can actually go through and I can continue editing that effect. I'll click OK to this. Maybe I want to add another effect, then I can certainly do that. If I want to copy this effect to something else, what I do is I can create a style. So if I right click on this, I go to Object Style, New Style from Bitmap Effect. I'm going to call this Conde, and I'll click OK. That's going to open up my Styles Docker. And in here, I have a style called Conde. So if I select this element, I can double click that, and that will apply that style to this object. Or I can simply select the element and click on Apply Selected. I'm doing a backup right now. I can click on Apply Selected, and it will apply that effect to that. Now this is text. I've applied the effect to it, but I can also change the text even though it has that effect quite easily. Select off, and I now have that same style applied to the text, which still remains editable. That's actually pretty cool. Art styles were added in 2020. And so I'm going to select this element from the effects menu, go down to creative, and then into art style. Now, these are fairly memory intensive, so some of them take a little bit of time to process, depending on the size of the image. Graphite is not what I wanted to use here. Let's pick pink pastel. And it can add some pretty interesting effects to the image. But as I say, they are a little bit memory intensive. So if you want to create a nice stylize or a nice effect for a portrait or something like that, it's very easy to do. I'm going to delete this one. I'll select this one here, go to my effects menu, down to creative art styles. And this is the one I would do in graphite. And you can see a detail like at low, medium, high. I'll leave this one at high. And we now have sort of like a charcoal or a Conde sketch done with maybe a black Conde pencil or done with charcoal. Okay, scripts and macros, not available in the Macintosh. So CorelDRAW uses VBA for creating the scripts and the macros. On the Mac, we do have scripting language. It's actually JavaScript. A brain freeze there. It's actually JavaScript that we use. There's a number of macros that are provided with, excuse me, with the application. To access those macros, let me go create a new document. It's Tools, Scripts, Run Script. If you want to sublimate a calendar onto a cotton towel or something like that, I'm going to select Calendar Wizard and simply click on Run. In here, I can dictate what year I want. I can select all, or because I'm doing the entire year for the layout, I'm going to select year 12 small bottom. And what that's going to do is it's going to give me my calendar down here and an area for an image. And I'll simply click on generate. Now, I created a new document here. The document is a tabloid page size. I could just as easily have done this on a business card, or a 3-foot by 4-foot page. Maybe I want to do an event calendar that's going to be hung up in a store or something like that, then I can certainly do that. I'm going to hit close on this. And now it's just a matter of going out and grabbing an image. I happen to be in this folder. What do we have that I can put in there? Well, here we go. What I might do is go like this. I'm going to move this off a little bit. I want to change the size of this box. Right click and drag, power clip inside. Fit proportionally. Oops, let's go fill. And then down here, I can put the year and maybe MVP player, put his name, whatever the case may be, and then go ahead and print this calendar out. Excuse me. One other script that's quite useful. I'm going to go to my Windows menu, to color palettes, and then to palettes. Now in here, we have a large number of color palettes. I'm going to close off my palettes. Those are custom palettes that I've created. In here, I can go to process colors, RGB. If I go into nature, I have desert, I have rainbow, I have red in here someplace. You know, reds are particularly difficult to print. So I'm going to open up a number of different palettes in here. I can now go Tools, Scripts, Run Script. I'm in here, I'm going to select Color Chart Creator and Run. Now, one of the nice things about this, let me just change this down to 0. I don't need the date. And I don't want spacing. I'll simply click OK. One of the nice things about this is you're doing you're on the school circuit and you're visiting phys ed teachers and whatnot, and they have gym bags that they want their logo sublimated on. They're going to give you your logo. You're going to take your color palette and you're going to sublimate it onto one of the jerseys. And then they can go through and say, well, this is the shade of blue that I want for this. I just realized I forgot to pick the palette. So let's go back. Color Chart Creator, Run. Shades of red, 0, OK. For some reason, that's not working. That should create a palette for me. I'm going to have to look into that. But oh no, there it is. Okay, I was too impatient. That's what my wife says all the time. So I can now look through this, and I can go ahead and I can sublimate this. Once they get, well, in this case, it's red. Maybe the customer has a specific red in mind. It's close to this area. So let's go ahead and sublimate this onto that garment. They can pick it out, and you know exactly which red you need for that design. So it's a great time saver, a great little thing to print that on a T-shirt and have it hanging in your shop, so you can easily pick out colors and see how they're going to be sublimated. Just give me a second here. Okay, good. Just a couple of interesting effects, and I've shown these before in the past. If I come up to my effects menu, down to Pointillizer. Pointillizer will allow me to create sort of like a halftone pattern. For those who don't know what a halftone pattern is, traditionally a halftone pattern was developed for the newspaper industry in that it gave a way to put ink on a paper without putting too much ink on it, oversaturating the paper and making it wet and taking a long time to dry. What they did is they cut back on the ink by creating an image out of dots. And the larger the dots, the darker the area was, the fewer the dots, the smaller they were, the lighter the area was. And so that's typically what a halftone pattern is. This allows you to give a pseudo halftone pattern, but it will use the entire color range of an image or as many colors as you dictate. I can set the type of shape. In this case, I'm going to use a circle, and I'll click Apply. It happens fairly fast. Again, that depends on the image itself. I can zoom in on this, and you can see this is a whole series of dots that has actually created this. These are still vector objects, by the way. One more pattern I'm going to show with this is this image here. I'm going to, I have the ability to select a custom shape. So I hit the drop down, I'll select custom, select the image I want to use, which is this letter X. I'll select my element that I want to apply that pattern to, and Let's set that to 20. And then I click apply. So maybe I should have left it at 10. So I can take this image now, and it's going to look like a faux cross stitch pattern. And I can sublimate this onto a kitchen towel, onto just a piece of fabric. Maybe I want to stick it in a frame or something like that. Then I can certainly do that, and it creates a rather interesting effect. 45-degree halftone. Yeah, you can set the degree on that. Now, halftones can be any degree you want, and that's basically the angle of the pattern itself. But yeah, certainly create a 45-degree halftone. So here's our cross stitch pattern using that letter X, and that looks pretty cool. You can print that on a towel or whatever you want. Color palettes. So we talked briefly about color palettes. If you need to create a color palette, let's say you have a graphic image and you want to print this, you have the ability to, I can select the element. With it selected, if I go into my Tools menu, sorry, Windows, Color Palettes, and it's Create Palette from Selection. When I select that, I'm going to give it a name. Oh, let's go Condi again. Consistency. And I'll click Save. Now that's going to create a color palette for me on the right-hand side here. And here it is. And that now has all of the colors in this particular design in a color palette that I can go ahead and reuse. Maybe I want to use text in there, match text to it, or whatever the case may be. My second last slide, we're a tad over, but is workspace customization. Now, I've mentioned to you that, to me, that's one of my favorite tools. I've used a number of keyboard shortcuts here. I've mentioned about the view menu. There is no keyboard shortcut for wireframe or enhanced. I have sometimes problems with my thumbs. It's arthritis. Some people have arthritis, carpal tunnel, or very small hands. Control U to ungroup can be a pretty bad finger stretch. You also have to take your hand off the mouse to do it. So if I go to Tools, to Options, to Customization, and then Commands, on the Shortcut key tab, the first one I do is under the View menu, I do Wireframe, go down to the bottom, I'll select Wireframe, and I use the keyboard shortcut W, and I'll click Assign. To get out of Wireframe, I have to go to Enhanced View, and for that, I use the letter Q, and I'll click Assign. Now, I mentioned stretching your fingers and that sort of thing. If I go to the Objects menu, down to Group, instead of a Control G, I'll tap the letter G and click Assign. Instead of Ungroup, instead of stretching those fingers, I'm just going to tap the letter U to ungroup. So you can assign, you can assign. For some reason, my assign, let me go get out and back in there. My assign was not available there. Tools, Options, Customization. Okay, I think we might be having a little bit of a problem here. Maybe the application is a little tired. But you can apply single keyboard shortcuts to any of the tools or features within the application. So it really makes it very easy to work more efficiently and work quicker. And yes, CorelDRAW did not like that. I'm going to launch the application, and I want to draw your attention to this next dialog box that's going to appear. Because I closed unceremoniously, CorelDRAW so far along the way has been creating backups and auto backups. Now, I just opened up on my other screen, and it opened up with this message here. I'll click OK to this, and I've got another one. I'm having to drag these over. I can't drag draw over as of yet because I get these dialog boxes. So what it's doing is it has created an auto backup for all of the files that I currently had opened up. And I think there's 3 or 4 of them. It's taking a long time right now. So I think what it's doing is it's opening up the main file. Now, my main file will come up, all of these files will come up as untitled. And then of course I can just save it. I'm going to hit cancel on this. And it had one more for me to bring up. And I hit cancel on it. Let me bring this over, maximize that. And now you see I have my wireframe enhanced view. I still have my keyboard shortcuts, so I'm hitting number 2, tapping the number 2 to get back to where I was. Of course, I could use the Pages Docker as well. And so creating keyboard shortcuts can make it very easy. The other thing is I've used the contour tool and I use it quite a bit. So I'm going to hold my finger on the Control+Alt key. I'll take contour. I'll drag this out. Another one I did is fit text to path. So from the text menu down to fit text to path, Control+Alt, click and drag, and I'll drag this out here. I've now started to create my own custom toolbar that allows me to access tools right on screen. One more thing about tools and then options is that this is where you'll find all of the settings for the application. And we've put them into different categories. This one is the customization one. These are the various tool settings. Then we have the CorelDRAW default settings. Excuse me, and then of course the workspaces. That basically brings us to the end of the session. 2 final things that I want to highlight. One is learn.corel.com, and that's our Discovery Center. Simply type in that URL. I mentioned at the beginning of the session that I have done the CorelDRAW 2021 Essentials training. Clicking on this QR code will bring up that training for you. It's a 30-day free trial. There's 5 hours worth of training. I think it's 74 or 75 videos. If you spend half an hour a day, you can do it in 2 weeks and you have a 30-day free trial. And as I say, you can cancel the trial at the end if you wish. That 30-day free trial also gives you access to all the other LinkedIn stuff. Okay, that's it for me. I guess with Sprite's permission, I can go through these questions. Does that sound all right for you, Sprite?
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. I'm going to start from the bottom and work up because I've done some of them. Post all the videos later on. I better not go from the bottom up because people are adding. Let me go from the top down. Free shipping to Canada. Sorry, no. Thanks, Sprite. Showing everybody these classes. Thank you for the comments. Appreciate them. Trying to scroll through here. There was some feedback, have 2019 kind of jumped to 2021, or is that not possible? It absolutely is. If you have CorelDRAW X8, or if you have CorelDRAW 6, you can jump to 2021. That's not a problem at all. Yes, so yes, you can jump versions. Is there a list of actual shortcut keys? I meant to mention that, or show that rather. Tools, options, customization, commands, shortcut keys, view all, and then I can export to CSV or I can print. And these are all the shortcut keys that you've created, even ones you've modified. If you take a look at wireframe, you can see I've modified it to add the letter W for my shortcut key. So yes, you can certainly print those out. Can you buy Corel without a subscription? You certainly can. Is Corel only for Macintosh? No, it's originally for Windows. We've recently launched a Macintosh version with CorelDRAW 2018. And of course, the current version of CorelDRAW for the Macintosh is 2021. When we launch CorelDRAW going forward, we'll be launching both versions at the same time. Does Corel offer a free trial? Yes, Corel has a 15-day free trial that you can download. And as I've already pointed out, Angela, you can make it look like Adobe Illustrator just by selecting the Adobe Illustrator workspace. And we try to make it a lot easier for you to use. Yes, there is a quick reference card, and that quick reference card, Corel has a listing of shortcut keys on their website. It's a quick reference card. Yes, that quick reference card is also available. Oops, I close, cancel. Right here in the application, and it actually opened on my other monitor, so you can access that directly from within the application. Can you use Corel on a PC? Can you access shortcut keys from the application as well? Yes, Corel is a Windows application, and you can access the shortcut keys from the application as well. Yes, free trial. The CorelDRAW that Condi is selling is professional full version, or is it only like lease? No, correct me if I'm wrong, Sprite. You guys are not selling the subscription model. You're selling a full version of CorelDRAW, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
That's what I thought, yes. 30-day, no, the 30-day trial on the website. I'd have to check that. I'm pretty sure it's 15-day trial, but I'll have to check that, Tony. Can you use CorelDRAW on a tablet? Provided it's a Windows 10 tablet, yes, you can. Can you split an image for printing? By splitting an image for printing, there's a couple of things that come to mind. If I have an image, and I'm going to, just to show you this one very quickly. Obviously, I'm not going to do 30 pages. Current page, layout. In here, tiled pages. And if I go to print preview, you can see it's currently going to print across these 4 pages. I can dictate how many pages I get it to print across. And in fact, if I click on print preview up here, I can actually take my artwork and resize it down to have it only print across 2 pages or whatever I want. There, you'll notice that there's an edge pad in here. I can adjust that area as well to give me more or less, but yes, you can. If the old version, I'll lose my old version. That's a good question. If I have an old version of CorelDRAW and download a trial, will I lose my old version? What I would probably do is, if you can't download the trial onto a new version, then make sure you have the necessary files to, if you choose not to go forward, that you could reinstall your old version. You may run into a potential issue with the Corel shell extension. And what the shell extension does is it allows you to see thumbnails. And I've seen it in the past where you have 2 different versions on the system and you lose the capability of seeing the thumbnails. It's an easy fix for it, but you may run into that situation. Yeah, Angela, you may be right. Log in as a new user, create a new user profile and install it for just that profile. Absolutely. Is there a monthly subscription to CorelDRAW? Yes, there is. I don't believe Condi carries the monthly subscription. You'd have to contact Corel for that directly. Can files be saved as, gosh, did I not show the multi-file export? I may not show multi-file export. Multi-file export, if I go to the Windows menu, down to Dockers, and then to export, it's going to open up a Docker for me. I want to export this image, so I'm simply going to add it in here. I want to export this as a PNG. Now I'm going to click here, and I'm going to say duplicate. It's duplicated that element, and I want to export as a PNG. I'm going to add an asset. I'm going to select this, and I'm going to click add an asset with these settings. And now it's added my image here as a PNG. I'm going to select this, and I'm going to click on this icon down here. I'm going to change that to PDF I'll click on this. And so I've now added this one as a PNG. And these file names, it's picking up from my object Docker. So whatever the object happens to be called in here will be what the file name is. If I go back to my, let me close off a couple of these Dockers. That's what I want right there. If I go back to this Docker and I click on Export All, it's going to ask me where I want to put it. I'm going to go to my Condy folder, multi-export, select the folder. That's fine, say yes. And did I show this already? I'm not sure. Let's go back here. I'm going to my desktop, to Condy, to multi-export. And these are the files that I've just created. If I go to view large icons, no, it's not there. It's not showing me the preview here. I'm not sure why, but there's my PNGs and my JPEG and my PDF. So yes, you can certainly export as a PNG. Every time I open CorelDRAW, my laptop goes into overload. I'm not sure what's happening there. Fire me off an email, will you, Maria, and I can see what I can do for you. Are the 1,000 fonts included in the subscription? Yes, they are. Can I add fonts that I have already downloaded? Absolutely. Some of my fonts go back 20 years. 26 years with Corel this month, so that's pretty cool. Is there any way to see the images that you download from the free images that Corel provides? No, you have to download, and there is no catalog available for that. So the next one is I have an add-on for 2020 for 2019. You've updated to 2021, and it's a software add-on that's not compatible. There's not much you can do other than using it in 2019 or contact the vendor for that. I've never used CorelDRAW. Does the one-time purchase option give you discounts of new versions when they become available? We no longer have an upgrade price. It is a full purchase price, if you will, for each new version. We've stopped the upgrade pricing about a year ago. That being said, subscription really is the way to go, in that if you were to upgrade right now, for example, we come out with a new version once a year. If you purchase 2021 right now on a subscription, then come next April, when we come out with the next version, you would get that automatically free of charge because you're part of the subscription. So it keeps you current. Well, lots of stuff in here, Sprite.
You got a lot of feedback, Rodger. You definitely
I
did.
absolutely did. Absolutely did. Can I import my artwork from JPEG or PNG and convert to vector? Absolutely. You're going to use PowerTrace for that. Yeah, Sprite, I don't know if you were aware, but we had Tracy on a phone call. Not upgrade. Okay.
And I am still here, and I am so sorry about that, by the way.
No worries, no worries. It adds variety to the call, that's for sure. Tracy, mute yourself. Oh, so Tracy's on the call right now?
Well, I'm still on the video feed. This is me live talking, but earlier I was not muted, and I apologize about that. Everything else I was auto muted.
No, that's no worries at all. No worries at all. All is good. As I say, it just adds variety. I'm trying to see other questions in here. Is there a need to have both Photoshop and CorelDRAW? That's a great question. The way I look at it is these are tools that you're going to use for whatever you do. That in mind, Photoshop is raster manipulation. It's for bitmaps, it's for raster images. CorelDRAW is for vector. You cannot get clean, crisp, sharp lines with raster image, not anywhere like you can with CorelDRAW. So there's that to keep in mind. Can you select the same color objects without having to shift and click? That's a great question. The answer to that is yeah. The quick answer to that is yes. From the edit menu, go down to find and replace. And if I select this element here, I'm going to ungroup all. And if I was to scatter these all over the place, and let me just do an ungroup all on this one as well. And in here, I want to find objects. I can add a query, and this will create a query for me. So I'm looking for a uniform fill. I want a uniform fill color. In here, I can grab my eyedropper tool, and I can say I want this color here. And that's the only thing I've got selected. If it was a curve, if it was a complex star, if it was text, I could itemize all those. I'll click OK. Excuse me, and then find all. So it's found all those objects, and now I'm going to change them to a different color. So those are all the objects that were in that design with that particular color. And so that's using the find and replace. Very, very powerful feature. I can also save those queries, bring them back up, and do a number of different things with them. So I want to look for all CMYK blacks and change them all to RGB. I can do that. Shortcuts are nifty. Yeah, I strongly believe keep your left hand on the keyboard, your right hand on the mouse, and it's amazing the amount of time that you'll save in the application. iPhone Google is your friend. This is an interesting one too. Any idea why these commands take forever? I have a Lenovo ThinkPad 32 gig i7. Having so much issues with it. To start off with, go into MS Config and turn off all the Lenovo extensions. I found I'm using a ThinkPad as well. Excuse me, and that's helped me a lot. A repair install may help, or resetting the defaults for the application. I could probably spend another half hour going through this sprite. It's your call. Why don't I do this? Can I select all, copy this? Oh, there's no contact information, is there? Sprite, here's what I'll do if you'd like, or if this makes sense to you. Can you save these out to a spreadsheet? Send me the questions. I'd be more than happy to answer them, send it back to you, and you can send it out to the list.
Yes, absolutely.
Does that make sense? Okay. And if you can also let me know what our numbers are like as well.
I will, for sure. Absolutely.
I'm still going through these. Let me just scooch down towards the bottom and see if there's any that I... Can you sort designs into is there a way to sort designs into specific theme design folders? You can create your own folders, put all your designs in it, and then use the Corel Connect to go through and add an alias for each of those folders. And in that way, you can go through and bring up the images you want. Alternatively, Windows, Dockers, tray. Now the tray is typically used in conjunction with, sorry, I didn't want to do that. It's used in conjunction with Corel Connect. But you can create separate trays for your different categories, and then just go through whichever tray you want and pull those designs out. So there's a couple of ways to do that. GIFs are also easy. Yes, GIF is a matter of simply select your image, and you're not going to use the, well, you could use the multi-export, or simply click on your export icon here, and you're going to select GIF from in here. And of course, there's many different file formats. We have over 120 different import-export file formats, but you can select GIF here. You can also create animated GIFs in PhotoPaint. I don't know how much. I'm not seeing too many more in here.
Well, I know I have a lot of questions about, will this be recorded? And yes, we are recording it. I probably won't have time to upload it today, but I'm hoping to be able to do that tomorrow. And Rodger, I will get you a copy of all these questions, and you can maybe put together a little sheet or something, and we can upload it into the app.
That sounds good. That sounds good. I'm sorry, upload into the app. Oh,
yeah,
yes, yes.
I'll upload it. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I know what you mean now. Yeah, perfect. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much for your time. Sorry for going over. I hope it wasn't too much of an inconvenience. And again, thanks very much. Enjoy the application. If you have any questions, you can either funnel them through Sprite or contact me directly. And that's it. That's all I've got for you.
Thank you so much, Rodger. And thank you, everybody. I will see you all tomorrow.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.